A Sunday bomb from Jazz Chisholm Jr. Conversations and discussions around a potential trade to the Pirates, as well as other organizations, continue to intensify. It looks like Jazz will be traded. But why are the Marlins trading Jazz Chisholm Jr. right now? And why is the return not likely to include any major headline guys? Tons to get into. This is Locked on Marlins.
You are Locked on Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked on Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from England and welcome to Locked on Marlins, your daily Marlins pod. I'm your host, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami Marlins_UK. Thanks for making Locked on Marlins your first listen of the day. This is your team every day, part of the Locked on Podcast Network. Reminder, there is a YouTube channel as well. Hit subscribe on the YouTube channel. It's also called Locked on Marlins. Join me in the comments and let me know your thoughts. This episode in particular is going to be centered around Jazz Chisholm Jr. The game has just ended, by the way. The Marlins have beaten the Mets. They have now taken 2 from the first 3. They play a final game in this series on Monday, and it was the difference maker, Jazz Chisholm Jr., right on schedule, right on time for this episode, because I really want to deep dive in on Jazz and consider everything that's going on around him right now. Everything continues to point to Jazz being traded by this deadline. That felt like that wasn't going to be the case earlier in the year, but it seems to be the case as we head towards the deadline. Number of teams seem to be interested, but some of the feedback here, particularly from our man Craig Mish, that we deeply trust, is that the return is unlikely to be as high as maybe you'd expect. We then get other reports as well around Jazz Chisholm Jr. So tons to get into around the position change, what type of return the Marlins could see, what kind of red flags are there in Jazz's profile, hence why the return may not be there. The Pirates, Rumours, as well as other organizations, plus overall, will he stay, will he go? But before we get into absolutely everything, this episode of Locked on Marlins is brought to you by Booking.com, Booking.yeah. The right to stay can make you a fan of any city, even your rivals. Check out Booking.com for your stay today. So, guys, Jazz Chisholm Jr., I mean, it feels like since rumors have started popping off about Jazz, he started hitting bombs. But Jazz with a 3-run shot today. It was a UK-friendly game on a Sunday. As I mentioned, I haven't watched a ton of baseball recently due to like family commitments. Obviously, the All-Star break kind of helped with that, but nevertheless, sat down on the couch, enjoyed a Marlins-Mets game. And when Jazz came up to bat, his third at-bat of the day, I knew what was going to happen. I think the Mets knew what was going to happen. I think they were strongly deliberating walking Jazz in that spot. We'd seen already a pretty hard hit ball in the first at-bat in the leadoff spot. His second at-bat, another hard hit ball, ended up being an out. And it just looked like Jazz was just timing up this starting pitcher for the Mets. So it was surprising to me, considering there were 2 on, and first base was open as well, by the way, that they didn't walk Jazz. I think they came close to doing it. And it was in a 2-0 count as well. So I was thinking, okay, does it get a 2-0? Maybe then you walk him. No. Jazz then was on attack mode. Full attack mode from Jazz. He was looking for spin in the zone. He was looking to absolutely demolish it. But a couple of sliders swung, aggressively. No contact. Nevertheless, he finally got one that he liked. It was inside. It was in off the plate, I think. It may have just nicked an element of the zone, but it was definitely inside a slider. And Jazz just turned on that bad boy, and he knew it was gone, and it was the game-winning stroke in reality. So Jazz Chisholm Jr. on a Sunday, and Jazz continues to be the difference maker. Guys, listen, we watch the Marlins. Everyone watching this show, in the main, if you're a Marlins fan, you watch the Marlins. You hear Skip speak after the games. Skip is aligned with me, or I'm aligned with Skip. That's probably a better way of saying it. But Jazz Chisholm Jr. is the true difference maker in this Marlins offense with everything that he can do. So the question right now is, why are the Marlins looking to trade Jazz at this point? And I think the answer to that's pretty simple in that with 2 plus, 2.5, let's just call it 2.5 years, but, 2 plus this year of control remaining, Jazz will start to get more expensive. And so, over the next couple, and Jazz spoke about it headed into this year. Like, he wants to walk and sit in an arbitration room, and he wants to win. He wants to win the next arbitration deal. It probably won't be with the Marlins. He did speak about it, that he came unprepared. It felt it didn't go down how he expected it to in that arbitration room. But he took it as a learning. And he was like, okay, now I know. Now I know how the game is played. This is interesting. And I'm going to come in. I'm going to sit in that room next time because I'm not going to accept anything. I'm going to go and I'm going to fight for the money that I think I deserve. And I think it's, going to be very interesting because I gut feel is that conversation won't be with the Marlins. So we'll wait to see how that goes. But that's kind of part of it for the Marlins here, where, as always, continue to cost control. Guys start to get more expensive. The methodology is, let's move Jazz now before it bumps up to like 5 million and then up to 10 million, et cetera, et cetera. And thus, right now, 2+ something years of control, it's the right type of window to start considering moving a guy. I think, do you have to move him at this deadline? I think is one of the key questions. Like, why now? Why specifically now? And I don't think you have to move him now, clearly. I don't think the price variance from now to the offseason should be huge. But naturally, teams that are in the hunt right now, may be willing to, go a touch higher in maybe their bidding price, let's say, versus waiting to the offseason. However, waiting to the offseason, and I guess with this extra wild card and a lot of teams in the hunt, like the market, the list of buyers hasn't really shrunk significantly. So it kind of makes sense for the Marlins to do it now, particularly as like injuries start to kick in. I think this is really interesting. Teams are starting to shuffle around. You're starting to get a sense of like who is legitimately in it and who needs help. And lo and behold, just before this pod's recorded, I saw the news. Ozzy Albies headed to the IL. Doesn't look good, I think was the language used to describe that. And so, these injuries, big time players on big time teams that, listen, the Braves, it's in win now mode. And yeah, they're dealing with some issues. Obviously, Ronald Acuna out for the year, Spencer Strider out for the year, Free just to the IL, Albie is just to the IL. I think Michael Harris is also on the IL at this point. So they're kind of struggling at this point, but they're still 10 games over 500, the Bravos. They're the type of team, like, the window's open. And they've seen it before, that if, anything can happen, they could get hot. And so, listen, that type of injury on that type of team creates maybe a very, very interesting fit for someone like Jazz, because they're struggling in the center field at this point. Not to say I've looked closely at that, but let's assume that whoever's in center field is a bit of a downgrade on Michael Harris and Ozzy Albies as well. That's going to be a big blow. The Bravos, the way they build their roster and have done for the last couple of years, is they basically have a starting 9, and that's it. The bench don't play. They have a lack of depth, the Bravos. And so if people start to get hurt, particularly offensive guys, they find it really hard to replace that production. And so, why now? All of a sudden, the Braves may be buyers and maybe more insistent on buying someone like Jazz, where they wouldn't be maybe in the offseason, where they have their big guys back and there's no real need. So, I think it's going to be very interesting around Jazz about why now. Do the Marlins make a move? But it sounds like they are. We're getting reports now of names of teams that have engaged with the Marlins directly. So, everything's trending to this happening. We then also have to call out what we're also seeing with Jazz, which is what I spoke about last week around, well, he hasn't made it back to shortstop, but he has made it back to the infield. I don't think that's a coincidence. So we're going to talk about that in some more detail. Before we do that, firstly, wanted to let you know about our good friends over at Booking.com. Yes, sir. And guys, this episode of Locked on Marlins is brought to you by Booking.com. Booking.yeah. And with summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you always secretly wanted to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rival cities. Yes, we're talking about Baltimore. Marlins head over to Baltimore on Tuesday with hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com. You might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival city. Booking.com is my go-to app, no doubt about it. When I'm looking for hotels near sports venues, straight to Booking.com. I know where I want to stay. I know what price I want to pay. And I know that I want breakfast in the morning, no doubt about it. So from hotels that look over stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices around the US for your summer travel this MLB season. The right stay can make you a fan of any US city, even your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or in the Booking.com app. And guys, this episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at PrizePicks. PrizePicks, it is America's #1 daily fantasy sports app with over 5 million active members. PrizePicks is the easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports. Unlike other apps, on PrizePicks, it's you against the numbers. All you do is pick more or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections and watch the winnings roll in. You can get in on the daily fantasy action with your friends and become part of the PrizePicks community today. Equally, you can turn $10 into 1,000. Yes, you can 100 times up your money on PrizePicks with as little as 4 correct picks. Turn 10 into 1,000. And if you're a promotions person, then, well, stay tuned here. PrizePicks has got you covered every week, from lowering select player stat projections on Tuesdays to help your lineup hit, or getting your entry fees back if you have a losing lineup on Fridays. So simply download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code LOCKEDONMLB for a first deposit match up to $100. That's LOCKEDONMLB via PrizePicks for a first deposit match up to $100. Pick more, pick less. It's that easy. Welcome back to Locked On Marlins, guys. Joining me, Peter Pratt, on Sunday, the 21st of July, and we are celebrating a Marlins victory, a Jazz Chisholm Jr. 3-run blast. The big knock in the game, the busted it open. The Marlins bullpen did what it usually does and what it did last year. You know, I don't know what happened at the start of the year for the Marlins in general, the pitching staff. Like, the heads were scrambled. I don't know what happened, but the bullpen has been grooving for some time. Have to call out, it's Tanner Scott. When I watch him today, I don't know if you guys are watching the game, but if you were and you saw the 9th inning from Tanner Scott, it just looks different from Tanner Scott. Everything looks different. He's pumping high gasolina as well. So, like, there's some extra juice in this from Tanner Scott right now. No doubt about it. But he looks in total control. The fastball is fast. The slider is filthy. Hitters literally are struggling. Every at-bat, no matter how good you are, that includes Frankie Lindor, etc. Everyone is struggling. And Tanner Scott is just breezing through these dudes. It's phenomenal. Phenomenal relief pitching, phenomenal closing from Tanner Scott. And I said this on Twitter as well. It's been a privilege to watch him as a reliever and as a closer in particular for the Marlins the past, year and a half since he stepped into that role. He has truly grown into it. He right now is one of the best in the game, unquestioned. He is a huge asset for whoever acquires him. I think, for me, I'd keep my eyes peeled on it. The Marlins headed over to Baltimore for a 3-game series this week. Yeah, I know the time is not right. Maybe the Marlins want to take it to the wire to try and get the best package for Tanner Scott. Reminder, he is a rental, but it would not shock me if Tanner Scott pitches for both clubs in that series. Maybe pitches in Game 1 for the Marlins, maybe pitches in Game 3 for the Orioles. I think the Orioles remains a stunning fit for Tanner Scott. Frankly, Tanner Scott is a stunning fit for every single contender right now. Everyone should be picking up the phone. Peter Bendix, there's no way he can mess this up, right? There's just no way. I mean, whatever comes back, it will look great. They will be young. They will be toolsy. They will be fun. But there's no way he can mess this up. It is a slam dunk haul coming back for a rental Tanner Scott. No doubt about it. Anyway, back to Jazz Chisholm Jr. And also, what I wouldn't rule out is a double package extravaganza where it's Tanner Scott and Jazz, the two most impactful Marlins players, going into the same deal for an absolute blockbuster deal. I would not rule that out because, frankly, and this is where my head's at with Jazz, he's a top 10 player at his position, and you could actually call that for center field or second base. He's a top 10 infielder and a top 10 center fielder. So, frankly, there's barely any club that Jazz wouldn't deliver some impact for. No surprise for me, no coincidence for me that we hear the rumors around the Yankees being interested in Jazz, and we then see Jazz transition back to the infield for a start. He played a few innings here and there as well. He's also been DHing as well, like he DH'd today, which is interesting. But Otto Lopez back, we've seen then Jazz back out to the outfield. But No coincidence there. For me, I know Skip spoke about it to say this is, I'm trying to win games, etc., etc. I completely get that. I believe that, of course. Skip wants to win every game. That is the pros pro that he is. Everyone wants to win every game. I get it. But, for Jazz to have not played an inning of infield baseball for nigh on 2 years, and then all of a sudden, right before the trade deadline, where the Marlins are listening and teams are interested in him, but not as a center fielder, but as an infielder, we know what's going on. And that just, again, further emphasizes or reaffirms the situation that the Marlins are serious about moving Jazz Chisholm Jr. at this deadline. The feeling must be that this is the time to maximize the asset. That's what they must be thinking. Right now is the time. We're going to get the best deal now, which I think is very, very interesting. Craig Mish equally calling out that the return is likely to be underwhelming in some ways. Most likely, I think we've already seen what the Marlins profile looks like for trades, in that they're going to be young, there's going to be multiple guys, and they're going to be, some upside guys, etc. But I think what he's calling out is there's unlikely to be multiple top 100 guys, big name guys in there coming back for Jazz solely in a package, which for me is surprising. It's confusing in some ways, but I think that only because I'm obviously a huge Jazz fan and he impacts the game like, not many players can do. He has a lot of skills, a lot of tools. A lot of people say he's average. He's an average player. He's being average in production, etc., etc., etc. I get that. I get it. The numbers are the numbers. And so Jazz can't hide behind the numbers. And the Marlins can't hide behind the numbers either. They are what they are. But for me, when I watch him day in, day out, I know what he is. And I know there's more that meets the eye there. But I think with Jazz, what we've got here is a situation where there's a feeling that there's a personality issue. There's a drama issue, because that's what we've also seen from Jazz, is the high upside, the high tools, the high swag, all of that. But there's other concerns associated with Jazz and his ability to mesh into a clubhouse, in a winning team, on a winning culture, etc. I don't know. But, the Phillies, for example, seemingly not a good fit. The Dodgers, seemingly not a good fit. Where there's a better fit seems to be organizations like the Pirates or the Giants, for whatever reason. So the red flags with Jazz, I get it. I understand that. There's a degree of, is Jazz, does he hold himself to account? Is he mature enough? Loads of questions levied towards him, for sure. And obviously that podcast at the start of the season was a blockbuster, where I don't think we've, heard that type of podcast. I don't think ever before, frankly. It was a pretty, without naming players, but alluding to players in the way he did, it was very open in many ways. So, listen, I get it. There's some personality traits there that maybe teams aren't particularly fond of. Seemingly that's going to impact the price maybe here that the Marlins can return. But if you take that away and you look at the production and the type of production and the tools and everything, for me, I still see a situation where the Marlins return here for Jazz should be a haul, in my opinion. It sounds like it maybe won't be. But we're going to talk about one team in particular and where I think the conversation should start. And that team is the Pittsburgh Pirates, where, by all accounts, conversations have already started. So we'll talk about that, who I think needs to be included in that package if it were to happen. And we'll kind of end this with an overall sense of whether we see Jazz staying or going. But before we do that, firstly, it's time to let you know about our good friends over at SupplyHouse. Yes, sir. And you can get supplies from the site that's made for the skilled trades, SupplyHouse.com. SupplyHouse.com is the reliable way to order plumbing, HVAC, and electrical products online. Their easy-to-use website is packed with helpful resources and the latest product info to help you get the job done right. Shop a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from over 400 top brands. Get your order delivered right to your door with fast shipping from coast to coast. Need help with an order? No problem. Get expert support and the industry-leading service from the friendliest folks in the business and talk to a real person every time. Pros in the skilled trades can also get a competitive edge by joining SupplyHouse.com's free Trade Master program. Every Trade Master gets access to a dedicated phone line, free shipping, and discounts on every single order. Join the thousands of trade pros already benefiting from their free membership at SupplyHouse.com/TM. And order plumbing, h-vac, and electrical supplies from anywhere with just a few clicks at SupplyHouse.com. And this episode is also brought to you by our good friends over at FanDuel. Yes, sir. I love sports and I love them so much. I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer games and the sports aren't sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. Something for everyone every day, all summer long. I'd imagine many of you were headed right over to FanDuel as soon as you saw the Joe Biden news. And I'm certain that many people were plowing in on a Nick Castellanos home run in-game as the play was happening. And lo and behold, Nick Castellanos delivered as expected. I think I saw some bets going at plus 600. I think for his final at-bat, it may have been plus 1,200 on Nick Castellanos to home run in that game specifically, live in play. So, wow, that was absolutely on schedule, let's say, from Nick Castellanos. So head on over to FanDuel.com. Start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel, official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball. All right, guys, welcome back. Locked on Marlins. Sunday, the 21st of June, the Marlins win. They beat the Mets, and they beat the Mets. You know, a lot of the reason behind that, Jazz Chisholm Jr., 3-run blast. They could have walked him. They probably should have walked him. They thought about walking him. Nevertheless, they wish they did by the end of it because Jazz absolutely unloaded on one 3-run blast. The Marlins bullpen holds it just about. And bullpen looking sharp. Tanner Scott in particular looking real nice. So Jazz Chisholm Jr., again with another, exclamation point. As soon as these rumors have surfaced, he has come alive. The Pirates rumors are starting to circulate. This was after the Yankees rumors. But from a Pirates perspective, you go and look at, okay, who are the top prospects in play? Where are they going to go for this one? The Pirates and Marlins spent some time talking about Edward Cabrera in the offseason. So there may be some names through that. That's my sense with the Pirates is the Marlins and Pirates got close on an Edward Cabrera deal, it seems, during the offseason. There's obviously people in that system that the Marlins like. And so this, to me, I think is a very interesting fit in that, probably a lot of the work has been done where Peter Bendix and the rest of the guys have identified players in the Pirate system that they think, fit the profile, that they'd be very interested in. The question you got to think about is 2.5 years of Jazz versus, preseason Edward Cabrera. How much variance in trade value is there? In my opinion, it should be, there should be tons more trade value in Jazz. I think Jazz is an above average player. He is an above average player at his position. I think there's still more in there. I think Jazz is going to kick on. Like when Jazz gets traded, which I think is pretty inevitable at this point, which is very disappointing. But when he does get traded, I think Jazz is going to take his game to the next level, frankly. I think he's already taken his game to the next level this year. But I think we're going to see even more from Jazz. I think we're going to see Jazz in the playoffs. I think we're going to see Jazz impacting games in the playoffs this year. And then we're going to look back and go, man, we probably didn't quite get back for Jazz what we should have done. But I think the Pirates and Marlins, it makes sense to me. I think there's a good fit there generally, seemingly from a clubhouse perspective or a vibes perspective. The feeling is the Pirates could be a good landing spot. So I naturally went to have a look, as you do, and go, okay, right, who are the top prospects that are, 20 or under? And really, the starting point is Tamar Johnson, really, who's high A right now. He's 20, big name pick, I guess. 2022 4th overall, Tamar Johnson. So, I looked at him and thought that should be a starting point. We then get the news really from Craig Mish, talking about this in more detail, that they don't expect him to be in play, which for me is surprising. Like, when I look at how Jazz can impact the game, what's Tamar Johnson's ceiling at this point? Like, I mean, I'm not a prospect guy, as everyone knows, but I look at Tamar Johnson and think, okay, is his ceiling Jazz? Is it beyond Jazz? I don't think it is, to be honest with you. So, but when I looked at him and thought, okay, he could be interesting. He's having like a decent year this year at high A. There's definitely power in the stick. 64 walks to 82 Ks, steal some bags. Like, this is kind of the profile that, is maybe a pre-MLB Jazz in many ways. Like Tamar Johnson right now, maybe like that's kind of what Jazz was. And so, you kind of think, okay, this guy should be in play. But for him not to be in play, I think is pretty underwhelming here for the Marlins perspective. I look at all the top prospects here for the Pirates, and listen, all the top guys are all pretty advanced age-wise anyway. So it's only really Tamar Johnson that stands out, particularly in the offensive guys, that's like young enough that you'd be interested in. I remember Mitch Jebb being talked about for Edward Cabrera. Maybe he's in play. Like, again, he's only at high A. So, there's probably guys in there that the Marlins like. I personally think that Tamar Johnson should be in play for a player like Jazz that is an above-average guy that can impact the game right now for you. Like, if you're in the mix and you're in the hunt, then, the Marlins should be seeking someone in the package at least akin to a Tamar Johnson. But overall, how are we feeling about this right now? Are we seeing Jazz moved at this deadline? I think the answer is going to be yes. Craig Mish talking about it. We're hearing names. We're hearing various rumors. And I think for me, for the Marlins right now, for Peter Bendix right now, I've always said this next week and a bit, this month, I described it a few weeks back anyway, for July, is, the most important month for him. And it could be his most important month of his whole Marlins tenure. How do you convert the talent you have now into the farm system that you want it to be, that allows you to be good in 2028 onwards? That's the task right now. That is the task. And really, if that is the task, and considering, I mean, the major change here with Jazz and why moving him now is all of the starting pitchers are down. They're just so hamstrung now. The Marlins can't make any moves right now to get this farm beefed up without, moving Jazz. Like, he's the only real offensive guy with any value as well. Tanner Scott will be moved, and I think they should do well. There's like tons of relievers that could be moved, and they could do well with that. But equally, Jazz could do well as well. So it makes sense to go now, particularly where you don't have Jesus Luzardo to move. You don't have maybe Sandy Alcantara to move. Like, the more expensive guys that fit the profile to move, they're not healthy right now. All you've got is Jazz, maybe Jake Berger, home run again for Jake Berger today. But, my sense here is that Jazz will be moved. I'm very interested to see what the return is. The sense we're getting is there's going to be no top 100 guys in there. Maybe it's going to be more guys, maybe 3-4 teenagers, 20-year-olds, 19, 18, whatever it might be. 4 of them for Jazz. Maybe you package it up, Jazz and Tanner Scott, and try to get that big name guy. Maybe that's the way to do it for the Pirates. Jazz, Tanner Scott, Tamar Johnson, Mitch Jebb. I don't know, however they want to play it. But nevertheless, guys, the Marlins were victorious this evening in a UK-friendly game with the Jazz Chisholm Jr. 3-run blast. Guys, that's been Locked on Marlins. I look forward to seeing you tomorrow as we, look ahead to the final game of the series. I also want to look ahead to the week ahead, particularly the fact that the Marlins are headed to Baltimore. I think the Baltimore Orioles and the Marlins are a great fit for many, many different trades here. So I'm going to deep dive on that one and see what potential trades there could be for the Marlins and Orioles, whether it's this week or after the weekend. Wait and see. I look forward to seeing you then.